Chill here with Aristoteles Moon. This is a Venus day, and we're in Jupiter, our Jupiter in Leo. Ruled by the Sun in Leo, we are 2 meters from the eclipse. And I want to talk about something. I said Aries is trining Leo, and Neptune in Aries is holistically curating Mars. Saturn ruling over Pluto in Aries is looking at, or in the retrograde phase, re-examining the structures of our cornerstones. Mars is our mind, our way, our blood flow, our identity, our blood or bloodline with Saturn. The way we fight, the way we achieve things, but also erotically our drive, how we orgasm, what we orgasm on. It's both the ontological unit and the epistemological unit. Why? Because Aries is the I am, which is an ontological unit, is the sense of, is the thing in itself, and it's also a way creating the connection between the ontological and the epistemological unit. In medicine, Neptune, we come to think about the fact that a lot of the scientific research and methodologies are incompatible with the ontological unit called the human being. We might also rethink the ontology and epistemology of people, of the I am. People talk about transhumanism, but he also talk about egregores, and he also talk about what is the thing in itself, what is the I am. Is it the place in the brain where the I am sits? Is it the localized versus the non-localized versions of the brain itself, the mind, the connection between the brain and the mind, or the body-mind? Leo is the heart. Is the heart the seat of consciousness and therefore the seat of the I am, astrologically speaking? Sun exalts in Aries. Now, within the um, working, not thinking people, and leaders are people, people are leaders. The playfulness becoming violation, which is how they created Peter rings in many of the cases, because the entertainment of kings was supposed to be the child self being not corrupted but violated. And they use the word corrupted because corrupted feels sexy. Corrupted is a sexy title for that. But the sexy title is misleading. Corrupted is something that we can have an erotic, kinky play around. And people say, well, also violated. But here is the thing. It was supposed to be difficult because it's so traumatic and everybody wants to escape the conversation. What it caused was that the way of people became incompatible with themselves. Now, this affects not only the royalties associated to the Epsteinis, get your regulars, but also the common people. Would you be surprised that Mars was actually not a part of the studies of astrological synastries? And I don't know how to treat that data. Talks by the stars, and she does statistical analysis of the charts of people. In synastries, statistical analysis of basically couples that have declared that they really love one another and support one another and are good friends. This eclipse is going to have Rahu very close to the friendship aspects of relations. And and Mars here also reminds us that the way of people has to be compatible. Now, the way of people has to be compatible, but also if people were in upbringing where they had to pick those that they like and sacrifice them in horrible ways, or betray them, or deceive them in horrible ways. Sometimes to God name Aris, thanks to the occult observer. Aris' job is actually to abolish rape. So this was an inversion of Aris. The hemispheres and the violation of the hemispheres connection. Okay, with MK Ultra or Mein Kampf Ultra. Shout out to Annika Lucas. Basically taking the self and completely um, harming it. The Moldavite waves. The Gen Zers, they say, "Oh my God, the Moldavite! What happened with the Moldavite?" Everybody was so fascinated with the Moldavite, and then Gen Zers caught up with Neptune at the end of Pisces. Because what will the Moldavite show? Mein Kampf Ultra. It's like, oh, a person is trying to connect with their higher self. No, 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 we can't have that. They're going to be sovereign. They're going to have love that is actually loving. They're going to have an actual orgasm, not misplaced arousal. Orgasm. They're going to bring the water. We wanted people to pay for the water. In Europe, there is famine and risk of flood. The solution is rather obvious, okay? Hydro energy. Not if you ask the oil companies. They make money fighting windmills. It's not a Don Quixote. But here is the thing: if the Tsars before them left something that the Rockefeller gave more women rights then the oil companies had a place in the world. Now, what happens when Rockefellers or the oil companies don't stand to the growing quest? So Gen Z might say, "Oh, we don't want to buy Moldavite." Amazing, but they're still gonna look for the connection for the higher with the higher self, and the love that's actually loving. They didn't want they didn't want us to look at Mars and then talks with the stars, looks at the statistics of happy married couples, and it has Uranus in it, and it has Lilith in it, it has Chiron in it, Chiron moon. Right? I think like, if somebody would ask me as an astrologer, you see Chiron moon, right? What do you think of? Like, these people are gonna hurt each other emotionally. No, it's about emotional healing, perhaps if the aspects are amiable. Oh, what does it heal? Relational patterns. So these people are going from trauma bonds to secure attachment. Where will the plane land? The Chiron moon theme, the Chiron moon theme. Conjunction. Um, Not gonna take the sins of my father to the grave. Anyway, Sun, Moon, Mars, and Jupiter weren't on the menu. Who was on the menu? Lilith. Remember when I said Lilith is your partner? Look it up with the stars. I said it as a gut feeling. I have second house Aries, so more with the innovative signs. That which everybody thinks is pseudoscience until you say, hey, Shirley, how do you do that? I don't know. My lot of divination is 29 Scorpio in the 9th house. Everybody has their genius. That's mine. I wouldn't even know that it's it. And I'm like, I began to see I had to look almost statistically at my patterns of predictions to see that I'm actually predictive. Because, because to me it was like, I said something, then it happens, and I said something that I don't speak it into being. Because then I'd say, oh, I'm going to speak good stuff into being, and like, some of them happened, but not all of them. Now, where's Mars? Where's Mars? Where is Mars? Mars is missing. Neptune, Mars. Neptune missing. Mars. Mars sign. Although, I remember I received it as a colleague of mine in the ether, telling me, Shirley, if you don't like the way of a man, you don't like the man. But here is the caveat. The men that grew up in societies where since children, and their hemispheres could have been dissociated from that, or that they became programmers, I don't know. But where within children, they had to pick the ones they like and sacrifice them. Now, if they are dissociated from that, then it's impossible to like the way. If it creates a situation where the man whose ways I like would yield something miserable for us both, and a man whose ways I don't like to begin with, I wouldn't want to be with. What does it create? It makes it look like a leader is always alone, although we're never alone. My father told me around COVID, you will never be alone. 11/11. And yet with that never aloneness, there is a complete isolation, because the ways of people have to be in such way that is always isolating themselves and others. Doesn't work with anything, with life itself. That was the Rockefeller School for the elite. Did it not affect the common people? Of course it did. Douglas McIntyre did not come from a high-class society, for example. Another thing that's happening, Israel had an article about the doctor that was sending people to the kind of like the second Dr. Mengele. Now, that guy wasn't caught. Everybody was trying to get him, and somehow that guy was kept. Now, as an astrologer, to catch that person, where is it? I don't know. To catch that person, if I tended to the missing people, for example, I had to tend to the Neptune things around them. Why did this person go missing? To what kind of reality can this person come back? What was missing in society that person went missing? Okay, with Haymanut Kasau, Ethiopian religion and practices in esoterics. For Ethiopians have the Book of Enoch. There were castration of Ethiopian women under the guise of psychiatry. Okay, so the missing book, Neptune, missing, psychiatry, Neptune. a secret, isolated religion, Neptune. Mysterious, they have all of these tattoos that nobody knows what they mean. So the tattoos are visible, but nobody knows what they mean. It is something weird. Now, into such societies, it's very difficult to look for a missing person because, like, the religion we don't know. What the motivations of people, we would need to know how they think to know their motivations, but what we think we don't know. And this is how something became a grand mystery, Neptune, or a mythical level of mystery. Oh, suddenly there's another war with Ethiopia. Have you heard about the fact that people are escaping to Sudan to be safe from the Tigrian? Another mystery. So now people will need to know those mysteries to retrieve Haymanut Kasau. And in those situations, we get the fact that to be to find the sex that we do want, because Mars is sexuality. We talk about the aftermath of the Me Too. We would need to not just delve into the mysteries, but actually change the mystery schools, because that's what it was. It was a mystery schools, not just of the elite, because they affected the common people, that caused the ways of people to be incompatible with even themselves. Neptune is also sacrifice, so not to sacrifice the higher for the lower for the higher. What do we get? A healthy heart, Sun exalts in Aries. People are purging heart health problems. Remember my previous episode? They're going to get to the core issues. Um, so the mystery schools that were based on what caused Mars to be missing are being addressed through this eclipse. The simulated realities that were created to prevent, they were created to create a false light that prevents. Another thing that came about was and I really like two people break down in regarding that. Gigi Young, before she became over Christianized, I love Gigi Young. I understand the settings, but I always seek the truth. And Lara Dumcheva, the way she talked about Rudolf Steiner, because she said people are going from the Luciferian to the Ahrimanic. What is the Luciferian to the Ahrimanic? When the occult observer talks about the sacrificing the higher for the lower for the higher for the lower is the Luciferian, the lower for the higher is the Ahrimanic, because it doesn't actually reach the higher. And the Ahrimanic spheres are the technological telepathy. Heliodor, by the way, is good for that. And I got the crystal Heliodor from a person that was actually In ether, they told me they were Epsteining. Um, so Heliodor is supposed to assist against the Ahrimanic telepathy type of thing. Now, from exploring the Luciferian and the Ahrimanic, people will essentially seek the actual real thing, which is the heart. But the heart is basically an alignment of the lower and the higher, which we can only get to when we don't sacrifice higher for lower, lower for higher. So it's transcending the Luciferian and the Ahrimanic. Rudolf Steiner had predictions. But we don't have to wait the timeline that Rudolf Steiner predicted. Around COVID, I remember the alignment of the heart and the mind came about. We can't have alignment of the heart and the mind when the lower chakras are not aligned. This is why those that say, oh, those that are obsessed with the lower chakras and they have all kinds of sexual rights and so on and so forth. Well, embodied sexuality is the lower and the upper without sacrificing any of them. This is going to be one of those eclipses where, if I take a look at the previous eclipse where we had around friendship, and there were some dissolved friendships or addressing the dissolution in friendships, it was about what? Why did these friendships? Because of the higher and the lower. Oh, different types of beliefs. Amazing. About what? Sex. So it was not different types of beliefs. It was different type of sexual incompatibility. Not just. Because if it was just sexual compatibility, then where was the problem with people being friends? Okay, I wrote a post that addressed the fact that the people that were a part of the timeline that was taking down the Peter rings, again, I'm talking about patterns, not people right now, were seen as whores, prostitutes, whatnot, when they either never consented and thus were abused or raped, or actually said no, and then people said that they are this and that because they said no. Then people dealt with it and said, okay, what is happening here? Oh, this is a spiritual violation. Okay, why? I mean, spiritual is something that, no, well, look at Genesis. It's all about control dynamics. Okay, how did we get to follow this? But something to do with controlling people. Why did it ever work for them? Because infants were raped. And that affected, it created the DNA series of ailments. I even heard somebody that had an abusive relations with their mom, that probably had issues about consent when it comes to birthing. They wanted to donate eggs, and they spoke about their parent as, which they got a neurodegenerative disease from, as an egg donor. And I was like, I'm just observing. It just popped, and I'm like, well, wait. Egg donor, egg donor. And then they wanted to donate eggs, and they found out they have a neurodegenerative disease that they got from the mother that they called an egg donor. I'm like, wait a second. Okay, enough astrology for today. Who funds the curation for the pedo rings? Oh, so we have a situation where like, oh, a person is not such a cool person, but they still do something. No, 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 no. It's dropping the pedo rings that curates neurodegenerative diseases. The rest is like a band-aid. What happens when people remove the band-aid? You know that Gaza and band-aid are the same word in Hebrew. Before the 2023 war/genocide, what I saw was we're removing the band-aid, and I felt like, oh my God, we're losing ground. And then in 2023, I felt the same feeling of losing ground when Israel attacked, when Israel went boots on ground into Gaza. Now, what's in common between Israel and Gaza? Ritual abuse of infants. Why was it difficult to catch that second Dr. Mengele doctor? And by the way, Dr. Mengele was also not really held accountable. What did he do? Experiments, Uranus, sending them to gas chambers. Well, Rao is milliseconds from that Aquarius point. Well, paperclip was United States, Germany, Israel, Palestine. Oh, the Israel, no, 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 no. Palestinians being Dr. Mengele's towards Palestinians. You will not have a sovereign Israel without addressing the Dr. Mengele Israelis that were Dr. Mengele's towards Israelis. You will not have a sovereign Palestine without addressing the Dr. Mengele's Palestinians that were Dr. Mengele's to Palestinians. Now, Israel has a Pluto in the fifth house, which and this is how, when we look at synastries between people, we get planet like Uranus being incredibly relevant. Why? Because Uranus doesn't let what is an impediment on the life energy stay in one's life. But it's a generation, it's a slow moving planet, it's a generational planet. So what does it mean? It is couples were a part of a change that was releasing society from certain stagnation. And then they had happy marriage. Why? Because they were not a part of the stagnation in society. Chiron moon, why? Going into from trauma bond to secure attachment. Lilith, why? The woman that will not be subjugated. Amazing. A healthy, happy, healthy man cannot be with a woman that is not a woman that will not be subjugated. He would either consider her as someone who's not really consenting. I remember there was, when I first dated a man, I was around 20, and he was older than me, not too much older than me. And then he was talking about intimacy, and I'm like looking at him, I'm like, I don't think that you're ready for intimacy. Eventually, there was something like really weird about the entire thing. But from my perspective, I was like, that's not a man that is ready for intimacy. Now, the violators are created by being violated in childhood. And even though I also was harmed, there was still something in me that was healthy. And I could see from my perspective, it wasn't a man trying to harm me. It was somebody who was not ready for having sexuality that's actually loving. And so I rejected him from that point of view. I was like, I don't think you're ready to be sexual. He was supposed to rape a woman, or he was supposed to emotionally abuse and rape a woman. Unfortunately, that person was used, and he did. Maybe, perhaps he was raped, but he also raped me in basically what was spiritual warfare sozusagen. Now, these people do this for money, for connections, or simply because they couldn't get out of certain. And they keep trying to threaten people that they are inviting harm when they are speaking about the truth. Now, one would ask yourself, what is the way out? Bombing the ghetto. We are, like I said, we're expected another Moldavite wave. And Moldavite waves tend to be like a Uranus or Pluto Uranus in the sense that they expose things in society and they don't let these things be. So we talked about Chiron, we talked about Lilith, we talked about Uranus. Chiron in Venus sign is a point of Thales here. Apparently Venus connections, which is values and love language, was one of the most prevalent in synastries between people. And then placements with the midheaven and the ascendant. The ascendant has a lot to do with Aries because it is the I am. To be who we are. The midheaven is one of the placements that do have to do with life mission. People say, oh, it's the work environment. Bullshit. Bogus. They say, oh, the life mission is Rahu or the evolution from Pluto. Yeah, the midheaven is what? A legacy. People try to reduce that to career environment. It's like the people who say, well, this, I don't know, prostitution is the most ancient profession in the world. Okay. So is the assassination of the people that went to prostitute. So is the exposure of the traffickers. So are the arguments about the real estate that is used to traffic people. So is the fall of empires that relied on trafficking for their wealth. Okay, the Phoenician king died because his harem took him down. So, the missing Mars, people whose way we like, is a telltale. Because that's the next thing that Neptune is now tending to, let's say, holistically curate. The way of people cannot be such that they are compatible as long as pay attention to the single people. This eclipse, pay attention to the single people. Now, the deacon teachings for the last deacon of Aquarius usually talk about, or particularly the padas in the nakshatra to do with that area, the Aquarius, the tropical Aquarius padas, which is a very weird thing, but it's a combination of teachings, usually talk about not having marital life satisfaction. Well, we have to understand that the padas was a teaching that was within the Indian tradition, that was within a caste system. Of course, people cannot be in a decentralized sign happy when their society is caste-like. Okay, it is the eroticism doesn't eroticize. Marital life can be many things. What's missing? Mars. Well, Aries sextiles Aquarius. Because a community is only a community where each and every sovereign is sovereign. Doesn't work with rape. Doesn't work with treason. Mars is also names. Around the Me Too, in Israel, there was a funny trick where instead of saying the word whore, they invented the word for the people that went to whores. And the men had to deal with the traumas that caused them to be these type of men. The friction within their friendships with women and their psychosexual issues caused them to try to project again, or they could have been the type of person to say, hey, that person's not good for you, and they're like, oh, they're leaving that person. Like, wait a second. What's happening here? People couldn't meet, people couldn't meet the men whose ways they like because of those so-called mystery schools that were basically rape and treason schools and torture schools. Even Morticia Adams, or the Adams family, not Morticia Adams, the Adams family that was considered to be people managing to have loving relations within those so-called torture mystery schools, is not going to sustain with this eclipse. Mark my words. The pent-up frustrations here from the fact that people weren't able to find people whose ways they like is something that doesn't even have, how should I say that? Um, People are going to consciously, unconsciously begin to ask themselves what needs to go down so that we can be with the people whose ways we do like. I'm getting gas chambers. Let me show you what I saw. Remember, there are those things that water the crops. There used to be those underground things, like a water sprinkle. But there were also the things that sprinkled gas from in the gas chambers. And I was seeing like a person, it was like a person that tries to project on someone that she is a whore, and then that sprinkle went into his body and sprayed like the gas chamber. I don't know why. Am I getting what created the people that were putting people in gas chambers, or the people that were pressing the button for the people to be destroyed in the gas chambers? Because gas is Uranus, chambers is antithetical to Uranus. Because it's a prison like, it is supposed to be a shower, which was the deception. So we have an agreement between Neptune that could be deception and Uranus that is gas. We're thinking about gas chambers. And something that was presented as taking a shower, or cleansing, or cleanliness. Does it take gas chambers to cleanse the life energy from being imprisoned with people whose ways we don't like, even when those people are supposed to be friends? Is that why the people that put people in the gas chambers were not caught? Because it was the Rockefeller schools. Like I said, Uranus won't let people be in the wrong marriage. This is why Uranian marriage can be very happy marriage. Uranus also rules claircognizance. Uranus in Gemini. Gemini can also have to do with mimicry and imitation. If you think about children, they learn by mimicry. They learn by imitation. In fact, it's one of the things that were really prevalent around the Epsteinis. And the reason is that the child development stage was harmed. So the demonstration of mimicry was very present. Of course, Gemini placements are such, where there was conscious mimicry, but there was also the tendency of people to mimic one another, even if they had a original stuff patents or company. You really, in Gemini is also the camera, so it was very visible. Like a person does a certain picture, or let's say a politician does a certain profile campaign or a profile picture campaign, then another politician, then another politician, then another politician, and then everybody has the same. The look, or people learning from one another. There's the socializing way of mimicry, and this is where there. And here is the thing: Aquarius is somewhat experimental, so it's kind of like think about a person trying to learn the way to another person, and they're like, "Oh, I'll try to do that, or I'll try to do that, or I'll try to do that." I was like, "Oh, but when that person do that is okay," or that person was like, and they're like, "No, you're gonna get jabbed." From my loved one. So in more amiable settings, it's also kind of like how people set the boundaries to people between what is a prank or what is playful and what is the kind of thing like, oh, if you're going to do that, you're going to get jabbed. And so what is a friendly jab and is not a friendly jab? Friendly fight for friendly, no. Friendly fire. um, but this is, how should I say that? By and large, the world is dealing with what people only said as, or what people thought what people thought was a conspiracy, or what people didn't get, let's say, the social media exposure when they did speak about this. The world is now purging, and only then will the people that put people in gas chambers will be able to be whether held accountable, or because we're studying what caused people to put people in gas chambers, and the deception and trickery and unaliving, and unfortunately it was torturous, or to try to make a certain procedure, and then is also surgical. So think about laughter gas. So there's a lot of dissociation and suddenness or explosion, and the compounding effect of people having had upbringings where being with the people whose ways we like would lead to this, which basically disallowed love that is actually loving on a sexual erotic level. And this is why the last decan of Aquarius, or those particular paras, were not having the marital joy. Now, there are people that are destroyed from within because, how should I say that? Because they won't be accepted as a perpetrator. And they won't be able to be with the people whose ways they do like as long as we don't drop the gas chamber timelines. Now, gas and laser. Neptune is laser, Uranus is gas. So we're talking about laser-based weapon production and radiation, of course. Think about nuclear energy, rejuvenating energies as nuclear energy still leak. I said for years I said nuclear energy leaks. It doesn't matter if it's supposed to destroy a city or power a city. Nuclear energy leaks. And Uranus is gas. So the energy that is based on gas. I know Russia was providing gas to Europe, and then they were calling to sovereign up in the face of that. Now there was another warning with NATO that Russia will attack an allied country. It already did. It Now the drones in Poland were just, and NATO gave an Australia answer once. It was like, oh, we will respond when in the time we see fit, and in the way we see fit. And, um, world news. And then people were predicting towards 2029, astrology is going to be big. Scientific revolutions are going to be big. Because again, we're delving into Aquarius territories with Rahu closer to Aquarius. Mm-mm-mm. And Indonesia, somebody went missing and found. They killed a snake, and he was in the um, inside the snake. Somebody was basically uh, somebody died by a snake eating them, and that person was agrarian in Indonesia. It's a huge python. And this got, well, it was a 7-meter python that ate a human being. I remember I saw something like that a couple of years ago. Now, I don't know astrologically if I can say, oh, python, it could be the nodes Rahu. Rahu is the head of the snake, basically, or the head of the dragon. Agrarian society. Aquarius is also to do with agrarian society. So this is kind of like a weird way to die is, of course. Think about death is usually by Ketu, but this one is by Rahu. It could be Rahu Ketu reversal for this man, but I don't know. Um, some of our worst pests actually need a hotter world. After the floods, hunger, Mozambique's second disaster. Trump imposes 15% tariff on key chip material to counter China. Okay. Congo. Confucian Christian colloquium final statement. Again, both are patriarchal. Okay, what did I say 3 years ago? The sky that punishes the land loses the mandate of the heaven, be it the leaders or the people. Um, more air defenses. So, definitely we dealt with the core issue of why people don't find the people whose ways they like within the current society, or why there isn't, let's say, marital joy or relational joy or love joy in the pathas in Aquarius that Rao is closer to. Or why, when there is marital joy, Mars is missing. This could be an earthquake in the world relations, both mundanely and interpersonally. Basically, it could be the answer to why people cheat. By and large, um, it's like why people have happy marriages and cheat on, because the Mars is what is missing is infant rape, pedophilia, childhood traumas glorified, erotization of the missing. Now, since the world is addressing the world's biggest problem as marketing for allocation of resources to innovative weapon and health industry developments, it also has to actually solve problems. CRISPR doesn't solve the rape of infant problem. Now, I'm getting strongly the theme of men having to deal with the fact that they were the men that went to trafficked people. And something inside them is just, they want to be vengeful towards the people that they raped. Do you understand how illogical it is? That's gas chambers. Like, these are the people that found themselves at junctures of gas chambers. Now, what were the Jews doing there? The Jews had genitalia mutilation in their books and practices. The Jews had basically intimacy that's not allowing sovereignty. Very likely part of my grandfather's family died in the gas chamber. So